Good evening. Lots coming up on the show tonight, including EastEnders and Mitchell. Plus, the backlash from the local elections continues. Will Labour's Sir Keir Starmer last the week? Well, the party's lost over 400 seats in the capital, so we've caught up with Sir Sadiq Khan to see what he thinks should happen next. You're wasting your time. Fantasy versus reality. The detective who caught Levi Belfield on the serial killer's lies. And
well, there is nervous anticipation here as Spurs fight for their future in the Premier League next season.
Good evening. Sir Sadiq Khan's waded into what he calls Labour's kicking in the local elections by saying the Prime Minister now needs to deliver. To remind you, Labour lost more than 450 seats around the capital last Friday. London's mayor also told our political correspondent Simon Harris that there needs to be less talk, more action, as Sir Keir Starmer tries to stop a leadership challenge. But the London MP, who's been piling the pressure on Sir Keir, says the plea in his speech earlier today was too little, too late.
The election results last week were tough.
So said the man whose party lost control of 12 London boroughs. The Prime Minister chose a casual look as he attempted to steer his Labour ship back on course with a speech at a community centre in Waterloo.
I take responsibility for navigating us through a world that is more dangerous than at any time in my life. And I take responsibility for not walking away, not plunging our country into chaos as the Tories did time and again, chaos that did lasting damage to this country.
But Sir Keir Starmer is in troubled waters. At the weekend, North London Labour MP Catherine West attempted to trigger a leadership contest.
On Monday morning, I have told the party chair that I'm very keen to put my name forward and seek nominations from other members of Parliament.
This morning, she seemed more determined than ever.
We have failed the voters and we have to fix it.
But shortly after Starmer's speech, West appeared to row back. Instead of putting herself forward as a possible candidate in a leadership contest, she's drawing up what amounts to a petition. She's collecting signatures from other Labour MPs calling on the Prime Minister to set a timetable for his departure. London's Labour mayor regards West as a close friend. He's not calling for Starmer to step down, but his verdict today on the Prime Minister wasn't flattering.
People don't want, bureaucrats running the government. They want change makers, and it's important we start bringing about change.
Are you saying Sir Keir Starmer is a bureaucrat?
I think some of the things we've done over the last 2 years have been incremental and slow. I know from my experience of the last 10 years, you've got to be bold.
Sir Sadiq also thinks Starmer was wrong to block Andy Burnham's recent attempt to become an MP. The Greater Manchester mayor is seen as a probable leadership rival.
I think whether you're a sports team, whether you're a business, whether you're a political party, you're your best people in and around you. And I think Andy Burnham's one of the best. I want to see Andy Burnham, because he wants to do so, return to Parliament sooner rather than later.
The audience for the Prime Minister's speech was carefully chosen. They listened politely. But Sir Keir knows it's the judgment of his MPs which matters most.
Well, Simon, we always knew that today was going to be tense for Labour, and that's exactly what's happened. So what's the situation this evening?
Well, all eyes are now on the numbers. How many MPs are signing up to Catherine West's petition? At the last count, it's more than 50. That's what will be making Downing Street nervous. And in the last hour, we've heard from Jazz Athwell, who's the Labour MP for Ilford South. He's a former leader of Redbridge Council when his deputy was Wes Streeting, the MP for Ilford North, who's widely regarded as likely to be a front runner in any contest for the Labour leadership. Well, in a statement, Mr Athwell said this of Sir Keir Starmer's speech: "Today's speech failed to show he can regain that trust or lead us through the huge challenges we face at home and abroad. It is therefore with deep regret that I conclude it is in the national interest for Sir Keir Starmer to step down as Prime Minister and leader of the Labour Party." What we're looking at now is to see whether this builds a head of steam, and at what point might someone in the Cabinet decide that they're going to throw their hat in the ring and say enough is enough.
But a lot of this stems from the result results in London. We didn't have a full picture when we were on air on Friday. So how clear is the picture across all the boroughs now it's the weekend is done?
We do now, and it's not pretty for Labour. They had 21 councils in London out of the 32 boroughs. Before the election, they now have just 9. Now, they lost 3 to the Greens, 1 to the Conservatives, that's Westminster. 8 others went to no overall control. But I can tell you that of those, one of them, Wandsworth, which is no overall control, the Conservatives are effectively back in control after doing a deal with an independent that puts them in charge.
OK, Simon, thanks very much for that. Now, more women in London are suffering domestic abuse, with the violence against them becoming more severe. New analysis shows offences increased by more than 7% at the beginning of the year, with Croydon the worst borough. Charities warn abuse is also becoming more psychological, with victims manipulated into doubting the brutal reality of their homes, their lives at home. This report from Olivia Guthrie has the distressing accounts of 2 women.
You know you're going to die. He's going to kill you, so you don't leave.
Natasha, not her real name, suffered 2 decades of violence, coercive control and sexual abuse at the hands of her partner. He also abused her children.
He used to strangle them, slap them. The level of violence, punching in the stomach, pinning down on the bed so they couldn't breathe.
Sarah, also an alias, suffered 24 years of abuse from her partner before she sought refuge with the Women's Trust.
There were cameras in every room of my house. There were recording devices in every room of my house, so I couldn't make a phone call safely. I knew that if I didn't leave, I was going to die.
These women's stories are among tens of thousands in London, and it's getting worse. Police statistics show domestic violence in the capital is rising, getting more severe and more controlling. There were more than 93,000 domestic violence offences recorded in the capital last year. That's a rise of more than 6,000 on the previous year. And early data shows there's been an almost 8% rise in the first 3 months of this year compared to the same period in 2025.
93% of these cases never make it to court. Here in Croydon, it's the worst borough in London for domestic abuse, with nearly 1,200 offences recorded in the first 3 months of this year alone. But this is a widespread problem, with many thousands of victims likely hidden from those statistics. And perhaps most worryingly of all, teenage girls are twice as likely to be victims of domestic abuse as women over 25.
You see young men being more explicitly sexually abusive because of what they're, reading online or seeing online, or what they've kind of also been. It's almost like they're being given free pass now.
2 women a week are killed by an abuser, but more die by suicide to escape that abuse. At least a further 2 take their own lives every week. The Women's Trust says half the women seeking mental health support after abuse are turned away. The charity's seeking more government funding to provide help and hope to the thousands of women like Natasha and Sarah.
It seems impossible right now and you feel alone, but you're not alone. If you're still breathing, you're stronger than you know.
Olivia Guthrie, ITV News.
And if you've been affected by Olivia's report, you can find help on our website. That's itv.com/London. Next tonight, you're wasting your time. That's the message from Tottenham Hotspur's defender Kevin Danso to the people sending him racist abuse on social media. The Austrian international was targeted with emojis and messages after making a stoppage time mistake against Brighton. Speaking to ITV's sports editor Steve Scott, he said racism doesn't belong in the world of football.
The game, I got a call from my brother, who then told me about the abuse, and yeah, it just wasn't a nice feeling, I'm somebody who gives my all the time. I made a mistake at the end of the game, that cost us valuable 3 points. But I think, I'm only human, people make mistakes, and I feel like people shouldn't be judged or discriminated against.
Does it hurt you? Did it impact you?
Yeah, seeing it obviously, but I think The main thing is, like I said, it just doesn't define me and it doesn't belong in the world of football.
The Austrian international last suffered similar abuse while playing in Germany. Then he kept it to himself. This time, though, he decided he must speak out.
I think I was very young and I didn't want to make it a big thing, actually. And I remember it was a game against Bayern Munich, had a clash with Kingsley Coman, and the Bayern fans were just like flooded in my messages, sending like monkey emojis, stuff like that. And then next time you play Bayern, you'd always go into the tackle, maybe not as hard as you would normally, and sometimes that can affect your performance. I feel like now, this time it did happen, it was important to say something, just address it and make sure that people are aware, look, I've seen it, and like I said, it doesn't define who I am. It's basically you're wasting your time.
While Spurs forwarded the messages to police, to date there have been no charges. Yet another shameful incident in a season in which anti-racism group Kick It Out is predicting a record number of reports of abuse. Steve Scott, ITV News.
OK, still to come on the programme.
I want to see them. I'm sick of you.
Love, loss and laughter in a care home. The new play tackling a sensitive topic. And
we may be getting closer to summer, but it's feeling like a chilly spring out there at the moment. I'll have all the weather details very soon.
But first, a widow who lost her husband and son in the Titan submersible disaster says she doesn't blame anyone for their tragic deaths. Christine Dawood from Surrey watched on as 19-year-old Suleiman and her partner Shahzada board the vessel before it imploded during its voyage to the famous shipwreck. Faye Barker has more.
It was the chance to get up close to the world's most famous shipwreck, the Titanic, almost 2.5 miles below the surface of the North Atlantic. Shahzada Dawood, with his 19-year-old son Suleiman, smiled as his wife Christine waved them off before boarding the Titan submersible.
Ocean Gate Expedition.
The trip booked after seeing an advert in lockdown.
This is not a thrill ride for tourists. It's much more.
I didn't believe it at first because it looked just too unreal, too fantastical. Shahzada saw it and he was like, that's amazing. I would like to do it.
But the sub, offering such an exclusive ride, imploded within less than 2 hours of its descent. Waiting on the mission's mothership, Christine had heard they'd lost comms, but she found hope.
Everybody was hoping. I think the majority of the people on the ship didn't believe that anything happened. We were all really under the assumption that they're just stuck somewhere.
For 4 days, the world watched the search and rescue operation, with reports the 5 men on board had 96 hours' worth of air supply. Alongside Shahzada and Suleiman was businessman Hamish Harding, French Titanic expert Paul-Henri Nargelet, and Stockton Rush, the CEO of Titan's owners OceanGate, the company later found by the US Coast Guard of causing a preventable tragedy.
I try to not stay angry because it's not helpful for me. What would the anger serve? So anger is part of grief. I mean, if you go through the grief cycle, anger is part of it. There's so much I can still do to help others, and there's so much I want to. There are other people to live for.
Now telling her story in a book, Christine hopes to help others, offering a guiding hand on the path of grief and tragedy. Faye Barker, ITV News.
Next, he's a serial killer and many believe a serial liar. Levi Belfield was convicted of murdering 3 women, Marsha McDonnell, Amelia Delagrange and the schoolgirl Millie Dowler. But it's his claims of having committed other murders that has caused anger and confusion in recent years, and it's now the subject of a new documentary.
Levi Belfield has been reaching out from behind his bars for virtually the whole time that he's been in prison.
I don't know, but I knew that I had to go down there and tell them that I think they should look into him.
In this country lane in Kent, the attacks were carried out with sadistic ferocity.
Confessions of a Serial Killer features former detective Colin Sutton, and he's joined us now in the studio. Colin, really lovely to see you. Now, we've seen lots of documentary series that have been focusing on Levi Belfield in those cases. So what makes this one different?
Well, it came out of an idea, really, that he has this habit of trying to stir the pot making a fuss, and it's disruptive to the families of victims and so forth. And there's this bizarre sort of, I don't know, paradox with it, that he won't admit the things we know he's done, he's been found guilty of doing, but he wants to admit all these other things that we didn't think he had done.
And we're talking about cases like Lynn and Megan Russell, for instance. You know, he has confessed to that in a letter, in a written confession. So why do you think he's admitting to crimes that he hasn't done? I mean, you've spent lots of time with him.
He's a very difficult man to fathom. You know, notoriety, possibly, I don't know. I think we'd all listen to him a bit more sort of sensibly if he were to admit the things that we know he did first. But it does cause grief and stress and you know, heaps more misery upon families who've lost a loved one to murder. So we thought this would be an opportunity to try and draw a line under that once and for all and see if we could prove on camera whether he's telling the truth or not. And that's what a lot of it's about.
And do you cover, because of course Michael Stone is in prison for Lynn and Megan Russell's murders, so do you cover that in this show in terms of trying to figure out if Levi Belfield is actually responsible for those murders?
Yeah, precisely that. I mean, we don't look upon, you know, the Michael Stone case. Michael Stone's been convicted and he's serving the sentence for it, protests his innocence. We don't look at that, his involvement, but we do look at Levi Belfield to see if there is a credible sort of thread of evidence that says he did it. And that's what a great deal of the series is about.
And do you come to a conclusion at the end? Do you feel like he could have?
We come to a conclusion, yes, yes.
But we will have to watch to see what that conclusion is. I mean, you have spent so many time in his company over the years, and you say he's a very difficult person to sort of work out. But do you feel he is capable or could be responsible for more murders than he has been currently convicted of?
I think it's possible. Nothing would surprise me with this man, to be honest. But, you know, murder is investigated very thoroughly and the records are all kept. And back in 2008, when he was convicted of the first murders, we looked as best we could at other offences that we thought were in the right place or the right time, the right method. And we couldn't come up with anything that we could definitively lay on him. But I'd never say never with him because you just don't know.
Now, you've featured in quite a few serial killer type documentaries. You are a very trusted face. You worked as a detective for so many years on 30 murder cases, I think, or thereabouts. Why do you think the general public have this almost endless fascination with these types of cases?
Well, there's two things. I think it's a window into a world that people know exists, but they don't really want to be part of. So by watching the true crime genre and looking at things, then they get that window into that world and an understanding of people and the bad people there. I think what's important for me is that when we started doing my documentaries, we were concentrating very much on victims, very much on investigations, and not concentrating on perpetrators. And that's actually moved the dial a bit for the genre, and lots of other programmes are doing that as well. And I think that's more healthy. I think that's how we should be looking at these things. I don't want to glorify or to big up people who have committed these horrible crimes, but I do want to show the effect it has on innocent victims and indeed the great work that goes on by police officers to solve them.
Yeah, and the families surrounding, especially those murders for which he seems to seamlessly continue to confess to. Well, your programme is out on the 25th of May on Prime Video, and thank you so much for coming in to talk to us about it.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. OK, so last night's BAFTAs and the documentary featuring testimony from the survivors of the Grenfell fire, who was also one of the winners.
The BAFTA for single documentary in honour of Robert Flaherty goes to Grenfell Uncovered.
Yeah, Grenfell Uncovered won the award for Best Single Documentary. Its makers investigated the systemic failures that came before the disaster that killed 72 people. Right, to Spurs now, and they can take a huge step towards securing Premier League survival at the expense of their East London neighbours, West Ham, if they can beat Leeds tonight. The Hammers narrowly lost 1-0 to title favourites Arsenal yesterday. Helen Keenan just sent us this from Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Yesterday was perhaps the turning point for who will win the league, who will stay up and who will go down. And in a bit of a twist, it was Tottenham's North London rivals Arsenal who may have saved them from relegation. Now look, for Spurs, it's been a very disappointing season, but they've been in much better form in recent games. And tonight they'll have advantage playing at home when they take on Leeds. But if we have a look at Arsenal and West Ham, between Spurs and West Ham over who will be relegated, but Tottenham are 1 point ahead of their rivals.
Come on, Spurs! West Ham will go down because Spurs will win. That's what I think. Been a fan since I was a baby.
Hasn't been a good season for us, but I think we've won 2 games in a row, so this will be a big game for sure. Leeds, I think they just secured safety, so should be a good game, I think. Yeah, but I think Tottenham will win.
Look, the result tonight won't decide for certain who is going to be relegated. We know that Burnley and Wolves are already going down, but it will be Spurs or West Ham who join them, dropping out of the Premier League at the end of this season.
OK, Sally's here to talk the weather, and I got a bit of a complaint. It was freezing today. And actually, our director, Dan, cycled into the office today, wasn't expecting the rain, got absolutely drenched, had to change into new clothes when he got into the office. I mean, his jeans are definitely a throwback from the early 2000s. They're very tight.
A sight for sore eyes, one can only imagine.
And I mean, and he's claiming you didn't warn him. So you need to, clear this up, Sal.
Look, Dan knows the rules. You have to come and talk to me if you want the specific local forecast. So, Dan, I hope you're listening in there. Tight jeans, I don't know.
But were we expecting it? It was cold. I actually had to put a coat on.
I know. Well, we went out for a walk, my husband and I, the other day, and he put on a woolly hat, and it was awful because his hat had shrunk. I was like, what are you wearing? But actually, to be fair to him, he was the one that was warm. And I got one of those fingers that lost all its colour today. You know, when it's so cold.
It was really cold.
It is. It's about 3 or 4 degrees below average. And if you get that wind as well, and we'll get a bit more wind as we go into Wednesday. So it is just chilly. But at least we finally had some rain. Sorry, Dan, because we have needed it. A little bit more this week. Let's take a look. Here we go.
Come rain or shine, Octopus Energy sponsors ITV London weekday weather.
Hello again. I hope you had a lovely day. Look at this photo. Oh, it's so sweet, isn't it? Just like Peter Rabbit. The weather's a bit iffy, though, this week. It's fairly cloudy and there are some showers around. Tomorrow's not bad, though. Some sunny spells in the mix at times, too. So there's dry weather. But the main talking point, really, is that it's feeling cooler than it should be for this time of year. So let's take a look at what's going on. So outside tonight, a lot of clear skies, actually, a bright end to the day, but it does mean our temperatures will drop right down, close to freezing. A bit of frost isn't entirely impossible, so you can get an indication there of how chilly it'll feel first thing tomorrow. But we've got the sunshine around as well as the day gets going. So nice and bright to start. As the day goes on, we get a bit more cloud joining us. For a lot of the daytime, it should stay dry. And temperatures up a smidge with a little more sun, but still below average, highs of 14 to 16 degrees. And then for the evening, you see that cloud sinking south. It might bring a shower here or there, but still plenty of dry weather to end the day. And then for Wednesday and Thursday, watch out for some potentially heavy showers. We'll keep an eye on that, but dry weather in between and still on the cool side. Here's the pollen.
Octopus Energy sponsors ITV London weekday weather.
Making the most of summer. Piri sponsors ITV pollen count.
So we are in between pollen seasons at the moment. The grass pollen is just starting to get going, but that, coupled with the conditions, means we have low levels over the next few days. That's it. See you later on. Cheerio.
And finally, a new play finding joy in the loss and loneliness of old age. Care, which is at the Young Vic, is set in an elderly care home and stars 2 veterans of stage and screen, Linda Bassett and Anne Mitchell. Ahead of tonight's opening, they've been telling Carolyn Sim why it's so personal to them and should be to us as well.
So everybody in position.
At today's rehearsal, we got a glimpse of how this production will deal with the difficult subject of dementia.
I want to see them. Oh, I'm sick of you.
Linda Bassett plays grandmother Joan, who doesn't want to be here. But surrounded by people like Agnes, played by Anne Mitchell, she comes to see what really matters in life. The pair, who have over 100 years of acting experience between them, say it's a tough watch.
In a sense, they're every emotion. A yearning to be as we were before dementia happened to us. And a kind of complicated longing, sometimes to be free of this world.
It's part of life now, because we live longer. Just to acknowledge that is good. I'm sad to say it is in our culture that once you've stopped earning, you're on the scrap heap.
The cast's ages range from 12 to 92. 76-year-old Linda started out as an usher at the Old Vic Theatre.
I'm 55. I'm not going to get him out now. When am I?
Before landing film and TV roles.
Welcome to our profession. Every new project is the most exciting. This is the most exciting now. That's what keeps you going. And that's what's lovely about being an actor, is that you don't have to stop, providing you can remember the lines. No one's making you stop.
What do you all want?
And at 87 years old, Anne Mitchell's been acting for 60 years.
Tanya said, thanks for the invite, but she couldn't make it.
Last month, she made an unexpected reappearance on EastEnders after leaving the show 8 years ago. For the director, this production highlights something we all need to think about.
It's really a celebration of how, when what's going to happen to all of us happens, we can come to appreciate life and feel life with a new intensity.
And with such long careers under their belts, Linda and Anne have sound advice.
Earn your own money, save as much as you can, and have a very full life.
Care might make you cry, but also laugh, and leave with a sense of hope. Carolyn Sim, ITV News at the Young Vic.
That's it from us. Evening News is next with Mary, but for now, from all of us on the London team, enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.